Major funding for this program was made possible by UPMC. Thank you.
Okay. Wow. Rejection. How sometimes that can fuel you. This is an article about me and Kyle Wesco were rejected because we were too small from Penn State. And I said this at the time prior to this game. Let me quote myself. Growing up, everything was Penn State this and Penn State that. Everyone looked up to them as the ultimate in college football. That's probably why I picked NC State, because I knew I'd get the chance to play them. If I couldn't play for them because they didn't want me, I wanted to play against them. Some of the greatest fuel you can have is when people say you can't do something, is to prove them wrong. It almost becomes a very fiber and DNA of what you're made out of. It'll be interesting to talk to Joe Manganiello today. But I gotta ask you a lightning rod question to see if you are a true Yinzer, okay? I know, here we go. Favorite Pittsburgh food?
Favorite Pittsburgh food? I gotta go Permane Brothers sandwich.
Yeah, okay, perfect. First word or phrase you think of when you think Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh, well, man, football.
Football, yeah. Football. Growing up in Pittsburgh, who or what inspired you the most?
You know, I've become really good friends with Troy Polamalu over the years, and there's just something about that guy, you know, and I think when you really watch the tape on him, when you see him crossing himself, saying mantras during the games, and you really realize how spiritually strong he was on the inside, and how much he didn't let the trappings of fame or money really affect him. That guy is. I really feel like if we were 1,000 years ago, that guy, he's some kind of like knight or warrior in the Crusades. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I love that. And so it's so funny because talking about growing up, I mean, you graduated Mount Lebanon High School in 1995. That's right. And I go back to 1995. That was the year we went, the little old team from Pittsburgh played that team in Dallas.
I know.
You know, they were going to, you know, Michael and Dion and Emmett and Troy, they're going to practices in their limos. We got on a school bus, and like it's a little team from Pittsburgh, you know, and we went to practice that way. So, but you grew up in Mount Lebanon.
I did.
Tell me about that. Tell me about going to high school. You played football, but then an injury kind of derailed you, correct?
Yeah. So I played 3 sports. I played football, basketball, and volleyball.
Right.
So I was returning a kickoff against Ringgold, Joe Montana's old high school, sophomore year. And cleats stuck in the mud, kid hit me, legs, you know, ran off the field, because when you get injured, you run off the field. That's what we were taught. You know, get off the field.
Right.
And knew something was wrong. And, you know, I just started thinking at that point about what I was going to do past high school. Like the brain started going because, you know, I had never really had a lot of time to think. I never came home after school, 3 sports a year. And then during the summer, it was just, I was on a cycle. So it was the first time I really got to sit down and think, who am I? What am I going to do? What am I meant to do? What can I do? What, you know, where's my passion? You know, what's that thing that's waking me up in the morning? And I had started making my own movies around that time. And Mount Lebanon is notorious for having like just an amazing campus, amazing facilities, anything a kid could ever want there. And we had a TV studio with teleprompters and like old analog editing equipment, which at the time was, you know, cutting edge. But like, you know, you had to cut your own film, splice your own film, put the soundtracks in. I had teleprompters. I would type all the scripts in so my actors didn't need to memorize. I could have it all there, scrolling for them. You know, I'd stay after school and do it. So I knew that like there was something there for me. Writing, directing, storytelling, even acting. And I borrowed the cameras on the weekend. We'd go and shoot feature-length films. We shot, like, I had a friend of mine who was a martial artist. He would choreograph the fight scenes. I would write the scripts. I would direct them. We figured out how to make homemade squibs so we could do gunshot effects. Like, we were crazy, and I knew there was something there. And so, when that injury happened, it wasn't like I couldn't have come back and played. I mean, obviously I could have.
What year was that? Was that when you were a sophomore?
I was a sophomore, and I just started thinking, I need to move in this direction. And what happened was, towards the end of high school, obviously we know, one of the great drama schools in the world, Carnegie Mellon, is in Pittsburgh. And I didn't apply anywhere else. I applied to Carnegie Mellon. I tried out. You have to audition to get in. They take about 16 actors a year out of about 1,000 kids that try out.
Wow.
It's a very small number.
Yeah.
I didn't get in out of high school. So I late applied to Pitt across the street, went to Pitt for 1 year, worked my tail off, just myopically, like, this is it.
Yeah.
And a year later, walked from Pitt to Carnegie Mellon one more time, tried out again, and that year I was one of the 16 kids that got in.
Wow. I mean, so you dealt with rejection. You dealt with, like, sense of, like, okay, I didn't get in. I had to also, now I got to figure out something besides football, and all of a sudden I found this passion. It seemed a little odd maybe, but all of a sudden you found a passion in high school.
Yes.
And then you used the rejection to almost kind of like, you know what? Tell me I can't do it. I'm going to show you I can do it.
Oh, yeah. It made me angry.
Yeah.
Made me angry. The pressure was on. And again, there was no plan B.
Yeah.
I didn't apply anywhere else. If I didn't get in, I mean, we're talking like very, very low odds. If I didn't get in, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
I don't know what was happening.
It's interesting. I want to share a story with you. I thought about you, and I've kind of read about your path and how you've kind of taken that element of rejection and kind of made yourself the most resilient man in the earth. Kind of, because it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up that really defines you. There was an article that I pulled up last night when I came out of high school at Carleton High School. I went on a bunch of trips, and I went to Penn State. A buddy of mine went to Penn State, but they did not offer us a scholarship because they said we were, quote, too small. So I went to NC State, where I had a scholarship. My senior year, we played Penn State. And there was an article that was written that day about our journey, how to get there. I pulled out that right before we went on the field. And the last thing I remember was Penn State saying to me, "You're too small to play Division I football." Yeah. And I said, "You're going to see how small I am. Grenades are small too, aren't they?" And so I said, you're going to get the worst part of me. I'm going to be your worst nightmare today. So that rejection fueled me to continue to go on to say, you know what, when people say you can't do something, you know what, that's all I needed to hear. That's my motivation to do it, right?
Yeah, whatever it is that makes you find that extra gear. Because if you really want to be great at something, you have to find the extra gear. The regular gears aren't, that's not where greatness lies. You have to find that extra gear. And a lot of times, it's somebody telling you can't do it. It's somebody telling you you're stupid for doing that. Somebody telling you you're too this. I mean, listen, all the things that I heard, even after I was working as an actor, you're too this, you're too that.
Because you leave Carnegie Mellon, you go to LA, right? And you're going out there to pursue. You went out there to pursue an acting career, a theater career. I mean, what was your intent when you went out there?
So my intent was to study classical theater at Carnegie Mellon, become a really intelligent, trained actor, like do it the right way, and that is something that was instilled in me, I think, from growing up in Pittsburgh, was if you're going to do it the right way.
Yeah.
Okay, like work hard, do it the right way. Go get your education, do it the right, be a smart actor. And but my intention was always to work in film. And so Carnegie Mellon sets you up with these showcases at the end. It's kind of like the Combine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. So
they have the big schools, Juilliard, Carnegie Mellon, North Carolina School for the Arts. It was Northeastern. There were a few other different schools. And you would have 3 minutes on stage in New York, and then in LA, You'd have a 1-minute monologue and a 2-minute scene with a partner in front of all the agents, all the managers, all the casting directors would come, and they would start recruiting kids.
Wow.
So it was like a combine.
Yeah, it totally was. And
You
so,
know?
I mean, you do that, was that a one-time thing that you did?
So we did, I think we did, because it was split into times so that the different people can make
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
You know, there were like 4 shows. You did 4 shows in New York, and then you did 4 in LA. And out of the ones in New York and LA, I mean, you know, it was, the results that I got were equivalent to like the #1 quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, wow.
It was like that. Like
Yeah.
I had my choice of agent, I had my choice of manager. So that 4 years at Carnegie Mellon became like this rocket sled for me
Yeah.
once I got to that actors combine.
Yeah, right.
And then out of that, I got offered a TV holding deal, which was like, they're going to develop shows for you. But at the time, this is the year 2000, actors, you had to choose a lane. You were a TV actor, you were a film actor. There was
Right.
no, The Sopranos had done 1 season. It
Yeah.
wasn't the way that we think of HBO or we think of Mad Men or
Right.
Breaking Bad or
Right.
Game of Thrones. It was like, you know, George Clooney was the only one who did TV and film.
Yeah.
And so I said no to the TV deal, even though it was 6 figures coming out of school. This would have been
Yeah.
security. I said no. I said I'm a film actor, and then I got invited to audition for Spider-Man, and I wound up getting it.
Wow. That's
So that week.
and so in that time out there, did you try to go back? Are you going back and forth? Were you continuing to go through that? The next, what goes after that? Like you're out there and you're kind of, okay, just from one project to another. How many did you end up scheduling ahead? And like, okay, what do I have after this? And if you don't have something, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you're unemployed most of the time, especially as a young
Wow.
actor.
Yeah.
You know, because you bounce from job to job. And again, if you're not going to do TV, then you're not going to have that kind of job security.
Right.
You're going to have, you know, Spider-Man was, I think it shot over the course of 6 months, but it was maybe like 10 days over 6 months.
Yeah, right,
And then you're unemployed.
right.
So you got to, you know, so you're constantly trying to find the next job. I always say, you know, you'll never sleep as hard as you do in your trailer on set because there's nowhere else you can be. You've got a job, you
Right.
have a paycheck,
Right.
like you can just lay down and like, you know, sleep. Because when you're not on set, you're looking for the next thing.
You know, and you then get with your brother, and you guys form this production company, right?
Yeah.
349, it was a 359, right? 359, I'm thinking, what's 359? And it goes back to the same thing, the 4-minute mark, breaking the barrier, doing the things that no one else says you can do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, that's the thing is like, there's a phrase that I think about a lot. You ride the horse the direction it's going, right? And I think there's a tendency, especially coming from this part of the world, where, you know, that work ethic, you know, like, I mean, you know, when you're a kid and you play football, it's like, when I was a kid, it was like, if your head isn't ringing after you hit that kid, you didn't hit him hard enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? You heard that a lot.
100%.
So there's a bit of it that kind of speaks to swimming upstream. If it's not hard, if it's not the hardest thing you've ever done, then it's not worth doing and it's not the right thing, or you didn't do it right, or you didn't work hard enough. And yes, I understand that philosophy. Try your hardest, because otherwise you're going to live a life of regrets. You're going to look
Right.
back and think, what if?
Right.
And you can't live like that. You got to put everything
Right.
you've got
Right.
onto the field,
Right.
you know, into that audition room, whatever it is. With that said, sometimes things just don't go that way.
Yeah.
It just happens. It's just life. Life throws you curveballs. I mean, whether that's, you know, things with health, things with family, things with, you know, rejection. You know, there were a lot of roles that I signed contracts for. I mean, you know, a great example is like, you know, Deathstroke. I was hired to play the villain in a Batman movie. I was the main villain in a Batman movie.
Yeah.
That never happened.
Wow.
And I signed a 3-picture deal, and it didn't happen. And so, you know, that's a great example of, well, thinking your life is going in this direction, but it's going to go over here in this direction.
Yeah.
And right around the time that started happening, there were a couple of other big, huge roles that were mine, or I was told that were mine,
right.
I signed the contract for, that also didn't happen. It was like a row of them. And it was like one of the most colossally horrible like streaks of like things that didn't happen for me. But what did happen was I wound up getting hired as a writer a lot. So I started getting hired for these writing jobs, and I started having time to sit and write, and people started giving me feedback and saying, you should be doing, and my father, I think back to my father was always said he was surprised when I became an actor because he thought I would have wound up a director and a writer, because I was always directing my friends.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like one of those things where like I look at, sometimes you think, well, my dream is to be a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
But what you realize is that your skill set is built more for the long run. I'm a Hall of Fame coach.
Yep, I know.
I'm the one who's supposed to run this whole show, which is even tougher, and more intense, and takes more hours and more of a varied skill set than just being a player. And that's kind of what I realized. So in that moment of like, of whether it was a rejection or something falling apart, life not going the way that I thought, it opened me up to the possibility that maybe I wasn't just an actor. I'm also the guy who's supposed to be behind the scenes working all of this. And because I was an actor, or I am an actor, I know how to talk to them.
Yeah.
Which a lot of directors and writers, they don't know how to talk to an actor.
No, and I think, I'll say this, I think Pittsburgh is about that too. Pittsburgh is about collaboration. Pittsburgh is about bringing people together. Leaders, they bring people together. They know how to unite. Pittsburghers stay together. That's why everyone's touching everybody, because we all feel like we know each other, right? I mean, really. Hey, you'll be okay, Coach. Like, yeah. Like they have to touch
you. Hey, Joe, glad you're back.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Joe, you okay? Joe, you'll be all right. Come on, man. So you get up. You're fine. So, but I do think that there's a little bit of that in what you're talking about. The water in Pittsburgh. There's I don't know if it's a territorial thing that we take pride in where we were raised, but also we took a lot of pride of being in that community. We played for each other. There was this, and I think that's what Pittsburgh are kind of all about. It's like you're proud to be from there, and you're going to be there for people whether they need it or not, and maybe just to teach them the lessons that you learned along the way, right?
Yeah, and that's what's interesting. I think for me moving back at this time is, it's really like the first time in the history of Hollywood where, at least like, you don't need to be there.
What's on the docket?
You mean like currently, like right now?
Yeah.
Well, right now, I finished 2 seasons as an executive producer and host of Deal or No Deal Island on NBC.
Right.
So for me, that was, again, it's like how the business shifts.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for you, like you looking at football today versus you coaching in the 90s and even in the 2000s, like the rule changes, the way that defenses are kind of penalized or kind of hamstrung a lot, the way the hitting is with the quarterbacks, and, the game has changed in entertainment as well. Like I said, when I came out to LA in 2000, you did film and television that were very separate. American actors didn't do American commercials. If you wanted to do a commercial, make money, you had to go to like Japan or Europe or somewhere far away. And you definitely didn't host a game show. But things change.
Yeah.
And I think the quality of things change. I think social media has changed a lot. I think it's interesting where, me taking a hosting job for a game show, I never would have done that 5 years ago. In fact, I turned down opportunities to do that years ago because as an actor, you wanted to hide who you were.
Right.
You didn't want people to know who you were.
Yeah.
But now, I think with social media, which is what's interesting is, like if you don't set a baseline of who you are, people mistake you for your characters in a certain way. Like people thought I was my character on True Blood. They thought I was my character on Magic Mike.
Yeah.
It's interesting that when I started hosting the game show and stopped kind of hiding who I was to the public a little bit, they realized, oh, those are characters. Wow, I really like his acting.
Right.
You know, like
It's
a funny thing. And also like, it's just fun. And for me, it was, it's something that I love doing. I love being a producer on the show. I love rolling my sleeves up and getting my hands dirty. So that's definitely something that I was, involved with on the producing side. But I'm getting ready to go back to shoot another season. I'm acting on a series for Netflix called One Piece, which is a very famous Japanese manga anime live action adaptation where I play a very notorious pirate on the show. So I don't have to produce anything. I can just go and show up and act, which is fun. I've found myself working in other countries more than I was even working in the States, and then definitely not working in Los Angeles ever. So at that point you start thinking, well, would I have chosen to live in LA had it not been for work? And the answer is no, of course not. I never would have just moved there randomly. And then it became like a 6-hour flight further away from everywhere I'm going to work.
Yeah.
And with taxes and, I don't want to get into like, listen, LA is not as clean as Mount Lebanon. Let's put it that way. All right. Like, it's not as friendly. It's not as nice. And I started realizing how much I had never really referred to LA as home.
Yeah.
I would always, when I was coming back to Pittsburgh, I'd always say, hey, I'm flying home this weekend. I'm flying back home to where you walk down the street and people say hi to you. People want to talk to you. People to me, especially coming, in LA, people will film you while you're eating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's just a sense of entitlement about the whole separation between, you and that, Pittsburgh, people treat me like I'm a neighbor.
Yeah.
And I am their neighbor. I take my trash out on Sunday night and I say hi to the neighbors,
No question.
It's just like to be able to live in an atmosphere that feels like a community, to leave here, to go to South Africa to go film the next season of One Piece, and then know that
you can come home.
That like if it was raining and there was a package on my porch, a neighbor would go and take it and put it onto the awning in the back. Like I love Pittsburgh. I love the people here. I love the way they treat me. I love the way they treat people that I bring back. I love the way they treat Caitlin. They've always been great to my mom, who's from a Boston native. And so, and I love the teams. I love the Children's Hospital. So for me to come back and be here, and also, this house opened up. This house was a house that my mother used to volunteer at.
Oh, wow.
She used to volunteer in this house. This is like a historical, house that my mother used to volunteer at during the holidays as a docent, as a, tour guide.
That's cool.
Just so she could be in the house.
Yeah.
And it came up for sale. I came in and took a look at it, and it was like, it's the same zip code. It's like a couple streets over from where I grew up. I can walk to
Is she living with you guys in the house?
No. She's still in Mount Lebanon.
Yeah. Okay. I know you're a reader. Did you read every one of those books behind you?
So I've read most of everything in back of me.
Wow.
But I will say that, so I work as a chief creative officer for Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So as a kid, I loved fantasy novels, Dungeons and Dragons, et cetera. So a lot of this is the history. It's like a history of role-playing and Dungeons and Dragons. Like I have a lot of the original, most of the original material that I use because I get hired by them. Like I got hired to develop a series of my favorite books as a kid. I got hired as a screenwriter, to write the screenplays for a season of television based upon my favorite books. So I have all of those up there. Then I have all what the books kind of were based on, the gaming books. I have those down here.
Okay.
Then I have up there, I have all the novels. There's almost 200 novels in the series. I have almost all of them, up here for reference, because it's like a workspace. It's a bunch of reference.
Yeah. You know where everything's at. You don't have to look it up. You know exactly what shelf and exactly how many books in if you need a book. Yeah.
And then also too, what's fun too about having, this space, having a library is that, I feel like, I feel like Odysseus, or like I had the Odyssey. Like I went away for 25 years to fight, Troy, the Trojan War, and I've come home with the spoils of war. So I have, my helmet from Deathstroke, and then I have like Axl Rose's microphone from the only time Guns N' Roses played the Apollo Theater. I have, footballs signed by, I got Franco. I loved Frank. Franco was like an uncle to me.
Yeah.
I got Franco. Peyton Manning came out to L.A. I met him. He signed a ball. I got to get you to sign a ball.
So I need to send you a ball, a helmet, and my book. So I'm going to get this from you before you go. So because I want to make your bookcase. I mean, I don't know.
I have your book here somewhere. I have it. I've been putting them all up. I have your book over there. But I
want to sign. I got to sign one for you. No, you're the best, brother. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Coach. It's an honor. Love you, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, man. Joe Manganiello really epitomizes never taking no for an answer, resiliency, never forgetting where you came from, being able to pivot in life, taking an opportunity and embracing it, and then unbelievably so, coming out full cycle back to Pittsburgh and making it his home. It's a great career. It's an inspiration to a lot of people. But it's also just another Pittsburgher who lived his dream and never forgot where he came from.
Hi, I'm Joe Manganiello, and this is my dog Bubbles. And you can watch for my conversation with Coach Bill Cowher only on WQED.
Yep, you're good. We good?